I'm joined by Jenny Kendall, who's Senior Manager of Grants for the Arts, and she's going to help me answer questions and joining the discussion at the end of this session. So the way we're going to work this is I'm going to speak for 10 or so minutes, and then we're going to open up for a discussion and questions as well. So hopefully it won't just be you hearing a long speech. I have written down some notes though just to help me remember what I wanted to say. We programmed this discussion because touring is such an important part of Decibel and the creative case for diversity. And touring is a named priority for the Arts Council. Later in the year, we're going to publish more information about our work in touring and announce some details of a new touring programme. I can't say too much about that at this stage, and so what I was going to do today was to return to some points that we raised in our touring consultation paper last year and talk with you about how they relate to you and your work. So, our 10-year framework for the arts, Achieving Great Art for Everyone, was published in November last year. Within this, touring is named as one of the key ways that we will achieve our goal of more people experiencing and being inspired by the arts. Why is touring a priority for us? Fundamentally, it's because we want to bring great art to people across England directly within their communities. Touring is one of the most flexible and creative ways of bringing art to people. Art, artists and audiences are all developed through touring. It's not only an artistic event that can be innovative, touring can be so in itself, revealing new places and ways in which to present work and new ways of attracting audiences. In order to help develop this framework, we organised a public consultation. As part of this, we published a document on touring, and we set out some aims in that on our future approach. We had some good feedback on this, and so I'd like to highlight 4 points we made in this document and talk about what they mean for us today. I'm just going to wait a little while for people to join us. Hello. All right, have you found a seat? Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so just to recap, I'm going to go over some points we made in a consultation document we published on touring last year, and I'm just going to talk about 4 points from that. So the first point we made, hello, was that we want work to tour widely across England. This is both about geography, reaching cities, towns and rural areas across the country, but also about the kinds of venues that work can tour to. Of course, that includes art spaces like theatres, galleries, art centres and concert halls. But it also includes parks, streets, schools, village halls and libraries. Not all people can or want to travel to professional art spaces, for example, young people or older people, so we need to think creatively about where we can present touring work. The touring infrastructure in England is England. Work can tour to wherever we want to reach people. Some of you may have wondered why we ask in Decibel whether work is suitable for rural touring. We use it really as one sign of an open and flexible approach to where your work can be presented. If work is suitable for rural touring, it's suitable for schools, town halls, clubs, places which have less technical infrastructure. Work performed outdoors has transformed the landscape, animating local and national festivals, carnivals and other events. In order to develop work for these kinds of places, artists have had to let go of technical comforts and also be prepared to be quite exposed to the public, but they have gained so much creative richness in return. people can get a little bit hung up on the idea of national touring, and touring being about raising status and profile. And of course, that is part of it, that's very important. But also, touring is fundamentally about reaching people. And to reach a wide range of people, we need to program work in different places. So the second point I wanted to make was that we wanted to see a greater number and a wider range of people experiencing high-quality work on tour. This means that the work has to connect with people on tour. It's very easy for artists and companies and the Arts Council to focus on the creation and production of art, with touring as a bit of an afterthought. Artistic creation is a very time-consuming and complex process. But for touring to be really successful, it needs equal time, thought and energy devoted to it. If work is being created to tour, then the kinds of places it will tour to and the people intended to be reached should be integral to the creative process. The work, marketing and audience development plans, education opportunities, all may have to be adapted to suit different geographic and cultural communities. Touring is not a one-size-fits-all activity. It's a process of constant creative development. Hello. It's all right. I'm just going to recap on what I'm doing. I'm going over 4 points we made in a consultation document we published last year on our website on touring, which was part of the work we did to develop Achieving Great Art for Everyone. Okay? Is it working? Can everybody hear? Not very well. Shall I sit? Is that better? Yeah? Okay. Is everybody okay so far then? Nobody wants me to recap on anything? Okay. My third point then. We want to see a greater diversity of high-quality work on tour so that people across England can experience work by a wide range of artists and companies. Creating and programming touring work is about crossing boundaries, geographic, artistic, social and emotional. It's integral to our aim within the creative case to dismantling barriers for artists and audiences and seeing more opportunities for artistic collaborations. Including artists and companies from diverse backgrounds in programmes of work across the country and encouraging a wider range of artists to create work to tour are very important ways for us to share the wealth of diverse artistic talent we have in England. A great deal of work by diverse artists and companies is often created in urban centres like London, Manchester and Birmingham, but people across the country have a right to see the work. We know that there are many ways that people can engage in art through digital media, but the live experience remains crucial. Artists performing directly within communities really can have a profound impact, both upon the artist and the community. And the fourth point is that we want to see a stronger relationship between the work we fund to tour and the organisations that programme that work, which really means greater collaboration between all of those involved in touring: artists, producers, promoters, agencies, programmers. We're not going to be able to achieve our aims of more work touring to more people and places or making the creative case for diversity without this. Different spaces and audiences call for different kinds of work. In order for artists and companies to create work that is relevant and appropriate for these spaces and people, there needs to be better collaboration with producers and promoters before, rather than after, work has been created. One of the trends we've noticed in Decibel over the years has been a slight movement away from a supply-driven showcase, with artists selling ready-to-go work to promoters that take it as it is, to encompass more demand-focused activities, with promoters more keen to see pictures and work in progress that they can still influence, and more networking between artists and promoters to discuss future collaborations. Collaboration isn't just about joining up with your friends and people you already know. It's about stretching networks and developing new relationships, because every time that happens, people somewhere get to experience new kinds of art. So, a little bit about how we're going to support touring. We have a national portfolio of organisations, and within there we're supporting a wide range of organisations to produce work to tour. And that includes Yarram, Rifco, Mind the Gap, Sirius, Grey Eye, Phoenix, Mahogany and Open Clasp. In addition, we're supporting promoters within organisations such as art centres, festivals, theatres, galleries and rural touring circuits who play an active role within touring, talent spotting new companies, commissioning work and working collaboratively within networks and consortia. We're also, of course, going to continue to support touring through project funding. Through Grants for the Arts, we've supported a wide range of touring projects. This includes a number of artists who performed previously at Decibel, including Sonia Zabra's Cat Hat Box and Thousand Crane's Paper Washy Wish, both of which toured extensively across rural and urban areas. Inua Ellen's 14th Tale, which toured and then transferred to the National Theatre, and Lisa Hammond's No Idea. Other artists and companies we funded recently include Good Vibrations, who tour their gamelan workshops and performances across prisons and hospitals, Bird's Eye View Sound and Silence tour of silent films accompanied by new commissions from women musicians, Quarantine and Company Fierce's tour of Susan and Darren, which began its tour at Sasha's Hotel in Manchester, and Crazy Cat, who will tour their sign language integrated shows to schools and theatres across England. We're also developing a strategic lottery programme for touring, which should be in place by April next year. We'll be announcing more about that later. However, most of you don't need to wait for this programme in order to apply for funds to tour. You can submit your touring proposals now through Grants for the Arts. If you're from a national portfolio organisation, then of course you can get more advice from your relationship manager on this. But all other artists and companies can get advice from our website, from our inquiries team, and from staff within our regional offices. I'm going to end a little by talking about international work. You've probably noticed that I've talked a lot about people in England as audiences for touring work that we fund. This is a really important part of our work because touring for us is fundamentally about using investment to support art reaching more people in this country. International work coming into England is of course part of this. Our artistic programmes have been made all the richer through visits from international artists and companies. We can also support work touring out of England to international countries, but we can only do this to a more limited extent, particularly when we're using lottery funds. We realise, of course, that international partnerships make a very strong contribution to the development of excellent art and artists, as well as offering artists and companies important new markets. Where artists would like to apply to support international work, we suggest that you talk to us before applying, and also that you think about how the activity will ultimately benefit the public in England, for example in forging international artistic collaborations, which will then result in new work being performed in this country. So that's my brief overview of aims and ambitions for touring, but I'd now like to hear more from you about your experiences, about touring experiences that have gone really well, or any questions that you have. Now, before we start, can I ask you to put up your hand because we need to make sure the mic goes round to you, and also if you can just say your name and sort of where you're coming from, that would be really helpful. Thank you. When we're starting.
Hi, I'm Khadija Tudoni. Decibel last time with the album Sex, Lies and History, which got a mini tour last year. Did you just say, just trying to clarify, did you just say that the Arts Council can support UK work going out via the Arts Lottery? Can you just elaborate?
I can. In fact, I think Jenny can, actually. I'm going to give the Grants for the Arts specialist here.
There is scope, and it is limited scope, because Grants for the Arts is lottery funded, and so therefore we have to assess it against the benefit to people in England. But if there is a very strong case to be made whereby, in terms of developing the artistic work by touring internationally, then there is scope for that. We would normally allow up to around 15% of work which is created to be toured outside of the UK, so it would have to be seen within that context of a tour, and it would also, there would have to be that rationale for how it's actually developing the artistic work of the practitioner or the organisation.
I think people will respond to this in a variety of ways through grants for the arts in particular. So, for example, some artists and companies might come in for the creation and touring within England and the UK of a piece of work. They may also have international dates, but they may say, look, the international dates are slightly separate. If you can fund us for this part of our activity, we know then that that will give us the base to then do the international bit of our activity, because in a sense, because we funded that creation and production, it then gives you the base to take the work to other kinds of markets. So people will sort of do different kinds of things, and that's why it's quite good to get advice on how you might frame that before you put in your application. Any other questions? This lady over here?
Debbie Gold, I'm here with Yab Frank. What I'm asking is, it's about the structure of applying, because you mentioned talking to the inquiries team.
Yeah.
You mentioned talking to the particular artist. Past experience has been, it's been quite hard to get past an inquiry team person to actually speak to a local officer. Okay. And then sometimes there's, in the feedback they've said, have you spoken to a local officer? So it's like the structure of the application and whose role is what, really.
Yeah.
Okay. It very much depends on the nature of advice that you're wanting, and inquiries are very well informed technically around applying for grants for the arts, and in terms of assisting you and giving you that kind of technical information that you need to put the application together. They can offer that and offer that to a very high standard. What they can't do, because they're not art form specialists, is give you development advice around your project. And I mean, we do acknowledge that since there has been an organisational review, the Arts Council has a lot less staff, and so therefore the amount of time that Arts Council staff have now, as compared to 2 to 3 years ago, is much more restricted. But you should be put through to a relationship manager for, at the very least, a telephone conversation. Okay. Sorry?
I said hence your role.
I think that is our commitment, that you should be put through for development advice. And it might be that the relationship manager can only spend limited amount of time with you, but you should have at least a telephone conversation with them.
Yeah, I think we've got one here. We've got one. Have we got 2 here, or just 1 here? And then we're going over there.
And Ben Evans from Be Creative, and my question follows on from that.
Yeah.
In the past, I've experienced difficulties when wanting to explain a project in detail to a relationship, what was then an officer. And then finding that the liaison between officers in different regions was not great. So although within the region of which I'm based would understand clearly the work, and if it was something slightly out of the usual pattern, that information was not relayed elsewhere, and so feedback might come back and say, well, it just doesn't fit. Why is it being funded in this way? Why is the company working like that? And so I suppose it's saying, well, in terms of who are all relationship managers taking responsibility for discussions interregionally about touring? Who should lead on our project there? Okay, so you mean for touring in particular?
So we're because obviously you can apply for a wide range of touring. That might be touring within one region.
Sure.
It might be touring across different regions.
Touring across regions.
You should absolutely, normally, as you know, we have one gateway, so that will go via whichever regional office you're based within. And normally someone from that regional office would also comment on the application. However, you're right, if that tour is then going to other regions within England, other relationship managers within those regions will comment on where the work is going. And I think what's really helpful in that is in your application, if you talk about a little bit about why the work is suitable to go to the places that you've put down. Now you can do that in a very broad way. For example, if you're touring across rural touring or schools, it may be why the work is suitable for that kind of space, for those kinds of people. If you're touring on a more of a venue basis, to different theatres or different clubs or different concert halls, it's what relationship you have there. Are they completely new to you? Have you been there before and it's been really successful? Is it a promoter you've known before? Is it a promoter that's been pursuing you and tried to book your work? The more information you can give us to make the tour schedule come alive, that's really, really helpful, because then it allows us to understand, because what we're funding in touring is not just the work, we're funding it reaching people, and we want to know that it will be as successful as possible in all the places it's going to be presented. So the more information you put in your application, that's very helpful.
I suppose just following on, if I may, just to ask, are there, I found the only way to do it was to actually try and find a relationship manager in each of the places to which the tour was going to go and speak to them directly. This is talking about 2 years ago, and I'm just wondering whether that has been resolved more now, whether you feel it has been resolved.
I think the purpose of the relationship managers outside of your region would be commenting in terms of what the tour means to their region. They're not necessarily, they're not commenting on the artistic quality within your application, because that's looked at separately by an independent assessor. So when we ask for regional comments, we're saying they will know from your application the nature of your work and the type, the scale, and the work that the kind of suitability they'll make of your work for that venue. But what we really want from those regional comments is, how is it developing the venue, and how is it developing the infrastructure within your region? What's it offering to audiences? So I don't think it's that critical that you have those, you try to have 8 other conversations with 8 other relationship managers across.
Yeah, that's why the evidence you put in the application is really important. I think we do talk a lot internally as well, but probably we don't have time to talk to every applicant in every single region. This lady, I think there was a lady over here.
Stella Connor from Theatre Royal Margate. I guess it's widely acknowledged that over the next few years, touring will become quite important in fulfilling some of the access issues in the arts for everyone, and what that demands. But equally, Grants for the Arts as a fund is under enormous strain with unsuccessful MPO applications, new entrants, plus touring. With all that in mind, are there any plans for any new streams or funding pots around touring in the next few years?
Yeah. So when I talked about a new strategic programme, that's what I meant. So later on in the year, we'll be talking more about a separate programme that's just for touring. And I need to sort of talk, we're still developing, we're in the final stages of that. So the difficulty of talking about that now is I don't want to leave everybody hanging for something which is then going to come out later, because people here might want to be putting in an application here and now, and they should absolutely be able to do that. Thank you. I think there was a lady in the middle first, and then the lady here, and then the gentleman there, and then the gentleman here. So we're sort of going to go in an arc.
Sorry, too much alcohol last night. Julie McNamara, Right Exposure. I think these are fine words indeed, but I would love to see some kind of relationship managed between the Arts Council and receiving venues, because the money isn't out there at the moment. 2 years ago I had a piece here at Decibel called Crossings. We ended up touring to 13 different venues. So we've established new relationships. We ticked your boxes. And Now there's no money out there. Those same relationships we've got with those touring venues are kind of dying out, because we've got a bigger piece of work this year. It costs a lot more money. There's 7 people on stage, and those small-scale venues are saying, we can't afford you. We can give you 800 quid. Now, that'll cover the van and a bit of diesel. We can get us home. So I'm wondering what the relationship managers do about that, appreciating the current financial climate. And really, I'd love to know what a relationship manager is.
What a relationship manager is?
Yeah, because we can do relay to the Samaritans for the rest of it, but I want to know what managing the relationship is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about that? We've got some relationship managers here, so I almost feel I should ask them. But a relationship, the reason we use that title is because managing relationships is a key part of their job. So that's relationships with the national portfolio organisations. So pretty much all relationship managers will have a number of national portfolio organisations that they are responsible for. So at the moment, they're in the middle of negotiating funding agreements with all of their NPOs. They will also often have relationships with local authorities. So local authority relationships are really key with us, and so we've tended to spread those out across different relationship managers within each office. So we're maintaining that contact on a very, very local level. But of course they will also have relationships with a wider body of people within their particular sector. So whichever sort of art form specialists or other sorts of cross-cutting specialists they will have different relationships. It might be with umbrella bodies, it might be with particular regional sectoral relationships, it might be with people that we're funding through project funding. There will be a range of them, but the important part about that job, I think, speaking as someone who's in head office, there is just me, and I'm Director of Combined Arts and Touring, so I've got 2 quite large areas and there's just me. So I work really closely with relationship managers across all of the office. They're the ones that are doing the work on the ground, and they're relaying back to me all of their information intelligence, and part of my job is to sort of work with that. So it's a very important relationship that I'm using their intelligence on the ground, and that's helping me do my work, and then I'm going out as well. So it's a very, I think internally with those people and with other people in the Arts Council, we've got a very important sort of internal connection. Their job is really to work on the ground with the artists' organisations and sectors that they are representing within their regional office. Is that a fair representation? I feel I should ask relationship managers about that.
Yes, that's a very fair representation of what we do.
I work in the North East. I'm a relationship manager for dance in the North East, and my area covers from Berwick down to North Yorkshire over to Northumberland, Carlisle Cumbria border. So we have a wide geographic spread that we all use. Some are bigger than others. Yorkshire's particularly big, North West again. And my day-to-day work is very similar to what Amanda Rigali is talking about. I have a portfolio of organisations that I look after. Currently they're called regularly funded organisations. I then have a new portfolio which is called National Portfolio Organisations. I then have day-to-day meetings or one-to-ones with individual artists, dance artists in my case, and that might be about grants for the arts if they haven't applied to before. It might be going to see their work so that I can then be informed if they do put grants for the arts application, and I'm informed of their work and I know what the work is. And again, my local authority that I look after is Carlisle Cleveland, even though the office is based in Newcastle. So there is quite a wide, you have to cover a wide geographic cover and art form cover in order to be able to do your job well and be informed and be knowledgeable. And so, for example, Zenday here, who presented work yesterday, even though they're combined arts and touring, they kind of sit within dance a little bit. So again, it's been about developing a relationship with Zenday, and they're now in the national portfolio. So yeah, there's a bit of work. Do you want to continue?
Sorry, just to follow on from that, I wonder if it's an unfair expectation to expect your relationship manager to broker new relationships then with venues who are really hard to open their doors?
Well, I think that I think we do a variety of things. So obviously, within Combined Arts, we already fund a number of those programming organisations. So organisations like Contact, like the Drum, like Warwick Arts Centre, like the Bury Arts in Kendal, like Albany and Deptford, like Stockton Arc, like the Roundhouse, like the Royal Opera House. So we fund across the country a number of organisations that programme work. So there, obviously, we have relationships with them anyway as national portfolio organisations. We then have relationships with other kinds of organisations that programme work. Now, that might be quite large-scale theatres, or it might be other kinds of art centres that may sometimes come into us for project funding as well. It may be also festivals that will often come in for project funding as well. So I think you're right, it's tough for us to do it, but we know the importance. And I think the way we can do that, and that's partly why networks are so important, it's really difficult for us to do it on an individual basis, with every individual venue wanting to come in by themselves. But through networks, we can. And so networks, I think, are a really important way. And I think in the Arts Council, we can play a role in that. So we can help to establish networks, we can help to develop networks. And that's part of what touring is about. And networks can be and should be really flexible. They're not set in stone. It's not one organisation in one network and that's it. It's about different kinds of networks to support different kinds of art, really. So I think that is going to be a key way that we work in the future. Do you want me to go back to your second point now that you made about the difficulty?
I think it'll come out.
Okay.
Stories.
Okay. Okay. Then do we want to go back to this lady now?
Yeah, I'm still Debbie Corp from Yabafun. It's more of a nuts and bolts question again. It's like when putting a tour together, venues have their lead times for booking. They vary, but generally a tour will take place in a particular time. So it's really how ready or how confirmed do the bookings need to be to book, because there's a lot of chicken and egg, because the tour might depend on the money. The lead time is such that they've got to get their brochures ready. Everybody needs to know where they stand. So what's your advice on that?
So what we say in Grants for the Arts is that for applications of 10,000 or over, you've got to expect a 12-week turnaround, because it's a rolling programme, which means you can submit your application at any point, but therefore we've got to allow 12 weeks, because it's quite tough for us to measure all of that work and make sure everything's being properly looked after. What we would say to you is it's really good to have a range. So what I mean about that, and it goes back to what I was saying before about different relationships with venues. You may have some core relationships with venues where they will just book you, and they'll be the ones where you can say, yes, even at this stage in time, it's all confirmed. There may be other ones where it's a pencil, subject to funding, or subject to other things. There may be, and you may also say, and then I also think I can stretch to another 2 performances or another 4 performances. Once you've submitted your application, you can keep on updating us with work. So, for example, if another venue confirms, once you've submitted your application, email us. Let us know that. What we're doing is sort of assessing risk as we go through this. So we've got to know what your touring pattern has been like in the past, you know, what sort of touring you've done, how many dates you've got in the past. So if you say to us, we normally do this range of dates in this kind of venue, we're doing something similar now, so we think we can get this. What we can do is offer funding subject to a confirmed tour schedule, which will then come in. If you're changing your tour pattern, or you're moving from touring in a very particular way to a very particular circuit to, let us say, going up to middle scale touring, or suddenly going national when you've only done regional touring before, then obviously that's a bigger risk. So we need to know what sort of the things you've put in place around that, and that might be about the new relationships you've developed in that. So that's what we've got to see. We've got to know that we have enough material in front of us to sort of be sure that the tour will happen, that we will go to sort of the kinds of places you're talking about, so we don't fund something that's meant to be large scale and it ends up going to small scale venues, or we don't do something that's meant to be a national tour and it ends up just going to 2 regions. We sort of want to have that sense of, yes, we can see how this will pan out. So the more information you put in there about your relationships with those venues, the better it is. Is that okay? Okay. I think we're going to this gentleman here now.
The flapjack's not bad. I'm Paul Fordham from Punch. I've been involved in various touring networks for the best part of 15 years now. I mean, I guess, sort of following on from, I've forgotten your name.
Julie.
Julie. I guess it's the idea about sustainability in touring, really. I mean, I've found with a lot of the artists I've toured, music touring, that the subsidy gets you into the venue, presents good work. I mean, on occasions I've been getting artists that have been getting cover features on national magazines and so on and so forth. Next tour, the gap between the fee and you know, what's needed is still too big. So the question, I guess, the observation that seems to me is that process of touring has not actually managed to make the work step up to the level that becomes self-sustaining, and I think that's a problem that we're all, you know, there's a common thing. Yeah. And ultimately, how can we work in a way that is about getting the work out there that actually makes it self-sustaining, so that actually we're not bothering you anymore?
I love the answer to that. I think that there are various things. I think, as you've both said, what will often happen is that as artists develop their work on tour, they will often themselves become more ambitious. So they will create sometimes larger, more complex pieces, which mean that then you go back with different demands on the venue and different asks. So it's quite difficult to get that, and touring is about a shared risk. It's about, and when it's Arts Council funding, it's about the shared risk between the Arts Council, between the producer or the artist, and between the promoter, the venue programmer as well. And it's about making sure we're getting that sense of risk right. So the Arts Council isn't taking all the risk, the programme is taking some as well. And I think, but we know that that will change for different kinds of projects, for different kinds of scales, depending on where you're going. So it may well be that you're getting, you've negotiated different fees across different venues. All of that information is really important within an application, because we need to understand why the budget is what it is, and that you haven't just gone in and said, well, it's Arts Council funding, so I can just go in for a really low level and not worry about it. That you've really done that negotiation, and they've given you the realistic bit of, look, for this kind of work, reaching this kind of people, this is what we think it is. And also that relationship with the programmer will really be about reaching people. So what is the audience development within that? How are you working together to achieve that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it has to be, I mean, what I'm talking about is I don't want the Arts Council or the venue subsidising it. We want the ticket buyer to be the person that's taking the risk and feeling confident in taking that risk. And the problem I'm finding is actually, how do you actually manage to take it on the level that sufficient numbers of people are taking risk? Because in the current environment, I think fewer people are taking risk rather than more.
I think that's a time check. Yeah, I can do a time check. It's 12 past 1.
I was being given the time signal at the back.
Okay, we're fine. I think we're going around here actually.
I'm Geoffrey Brown from Culture Information Services. It's just a general sort of let's share the problem sort of moment, I think. I'm interested in international touring, and it seems absolutely clear that for whatever reasons, whether we like them or not, the context of funding for international touring has changed hugely in the last 5 or 10 years, and all the agencies that had a remit or a role or a function in that area have either removed their funding completely or had it substantially reduced. The Arts Council, the British Council, Visiting Arts, and so on. And I'm just wondering what's the collective response to that? And where does the Arts Council fit in terms of international touring as one of its priorities within the, the group that you listed at the beginning? And is there a role for the Arts Council to participate in the lobbying or whatever, the advocacy, to try and unlock funding from other sources to support international touring? I'm just interested in where you're at, really, in terms of that debate.
I think that international is within Achieving Great Art for Everyone, and I think as we go on later in the year we will be publishing more information about that, so I can't say very much, but we have a very good relationship with the British Council, and that's something we really want to develop, because I think you're right. I think the partnership across government agencies is really important at the moment. But I'm sorry I can't say more at the moment. Any other questions? Oh yes, gentleman in the back.
Besides internet, I have to introduce myself. I'm Chong Wang, a theater director based in Beijing. I'm also international programmer for Beijing International Fringe Festival, which has 50 productions this year, including 2 from the UK. I'm wondering, besides the issue of international touring, is there any possibility for international collaboration, say, between the British and the Chinese artists? How could that happen? How could the productions relate to you?
I'm sure there is, and I think that would depend in a sense on which artists and which organisations you were working with and you wanted to have that collaboration with. That is something that, again, as Jenny said, in a sense, if you have some kind of collaboration between international partners and English partners, and what comes out of that is maybe something that happens in China, but also something that happens in England then, and brings that richness back to England, that could be very possible. But we'd respond to projects that came from the artists and the companies. Is that okay? In which case, gentleman there? Also, I think it's for the filming. Sorry.
I'm Paul Forden from Punch Records. Just in case the other one doesn't get the edit. Just a bit of a weird question, but it's the thing I'm thinking a lot about at the moment. What's a tour? I mean, the reason I'm asking is because in terms of trying to raise profile of an artist that we've been working with, I actually think that we'd be better spending time working with them over a period of a year to 18 months, putting them into key festivals and, subsidising them to provide, key support slots and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can talk about that. Touring is something, the definition of touring we have covers all art forms and kinds of work, and it's basically where the same event or activity takes place in 2 or more places. And there is no sort of sequential time thing there, because visual arts will often tour in a very, very different way to the performing arts. Performing arts we're more used to a set of artists on the road, one performance after another, but actually we're finding artists will do different things now. A number of live artists will tour somewhere, come back, tour another place. Touring can also be about participatory work touring as well, so different kinds of projects touring. So the important thing is about the sort of same event. We know that the event might adapt to different contexts or different spaces, but that sense of people having the right to see the same kind of work that's already been performed in London, Birmingham, major cities. I think gentleman there and then lady here.
It's really just to raise I think a real challenge for artists whose work is represents diversity in terms of touring, and in particular in relation to international touring.
Right.
So, for example, you've got, I don't know, let's say we've got a brilliant queer performer who's making work. Well, their audience might be in 4 cities, or you've got a particular niche audience, might be in 4 cities, 5 cities in the UK, but actually is much more likely to have an audience in New York or Melbourne than they are going to have in a rural venue, for example. And my experience experience is many companies build capacity through touring. So you build a relationship with one venue and add on one tour date, and next year you add several tour dates, and then slowly you build up national touring, and through that you're able to fund maybe a general manager and an administrator. And then, once you've got that infrastructure, you can move to a couple of international dates. It becomes really problematic for companies who suddenly have to jump to deal with very complex visas around Europe, making sure you fit all the tax if you're doing a festival in Paris and Italy, and suddenly, you know, Italians pay you 6 months late, and because it's a regular occurrence with Italian festivals, or Greece, or, you know, and different tax things, and you actually really need a competent, experienced general manager on board, but actually you don't have a big enough body of work within the UK to help to really seek support for that, subsidy for that through the Arts Council, going much beyond the 15% that we're talking about. And it's not, I don't know if it's a question, it's just whilst thinking about your strategy, I sort of, because we're at Decibel, I sort of beseech you to really think about that, because I think touring has unique, poses unique questions and problems for artists whose audiences are in urban centres, which are international as they are, much more so than sort of national. So it's a problem. Please help us.
It sounds to me a little bit like what you're talking about is organisational development. So what I mean about that is that might be something that you want to consider applying for rather than touring. You don't just have to apply to tour. Grants for the Arts is an open access fund, so that, and I think you're right, that always trying to tag on every kind of organisational development to touring can be quite problematic in itself, and it goes back to that sense of public benefit, really, and you're making a case that the development of that artist organisation, whether it's an agency supporting the artist, you know, the benefit that's bringing to England.
Yeah, and by strengthening your organisational capacity, you're strengthening yourself as an artistic organisation, which will ultimately be benefiting people in England.
Yeah, and making yourself more sustainable. I think we had a lady here.
Monique Martin from New York City, Summer Stage. To follow up on the question on international collaborations, can you talk a bit about what stage the project should be in to apply for funding? And if your preference is for the initial stage of the collaboration to happen here in the UK, or can it happen abroad?
Okay. It's quite difficult to answer, actually, because Grants for the Arts is an open access anything fund. So in a sense, it entirely depends on the project that we're being presented with. And obviously, I'm assuming that will be presented by a UK or European-based company, because of course we can only have applications from people within the EU. So it would be at the stage that they felt was appropriate. Probably that's a point at which they've got their partners in place. They've probably got some partnership funding in place, so it's not just the Arts Council but other kinds of funding coming in from international partners or other kinds of funding bodies as well. But it can be for an R&D stage, which may take place exclusively in England at that point. So for example, it may well be a collaboration where other people are paying for the work taking place in New York at that stage, and then we're supporting something in England. Or it then can be at a more developed stage when you actually have an event, an activity, which might be taking place in dual spaces. I think that's where a conversation is needed, really, about the point at which to come in.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you... The key thing is that, again, it comes back to demonstrating how there would be benefit to people in England, and it could be through the artists, benefiting the English artists, arts organisations. But equally, even if it's an R&D stage, if you could show potentially where this could go to, so we won't be assessing against what you're actually finally going to produce, but what your long-term vision is. So we can, and it comes back to this risk management as to whether we think potentially after this R&D stage, you will still be able to take it somewhere, take the piece, you know, develop the piece. So R&D is a tricky one because it's very hard to see what the final outcomes would be. But it's about you demonstrating the likelihood of that happening within the R&D. So you develop a piece of work, but you have a vision for where it's going to go.
Well, I think it can be really useful with R&D if, in a sense, there's a sort of end in itself. So what I mean is, it may be that that's about workshops or participatory activity, where, you know, even if it doesn't go any further, you've actually created something, people have been involved in it, people have got a great deal out of it through that process. That can be really useful. Are we okay? I think we've got another gentleman here. And I think we might be coming up to the last one.
Well, hi there, David Morgan from Breaking Cycles. I guess my question follows on directly from Monique's as well, which is, if you have a situation like that where you have a UK artist looking to travel abroad and carry out that early stage work, would it be more feasible to think about that in terms of the UK artists applying for, say, a personal development kind of G3 application and viewing it in that kind of perspective rather than a touring perspective?
Absolutely, it's a discrete project, and the outcome would be that personal development and artistic development.
Great, thanks a lot.
Is that okay? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And I'll be around today if anybody wants to ask me any further questions. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the showcase. Thank you.